All right, so going into the second part of these notes that we started last week, we're looking at identifying key characteristics of lines. So the first of these things is looking at the x and the y-intercept. So the first definition asks us, a blank of a graph is the x-coordinate of a point where the graph intersects the x-axis. We would call that the x-intercept. And then, of course, the other one, where the graph of the y intersects the y-axis, we would call that the y-intercept. So using x and y-intercepts could actually help us graph, but it's usually a very important thing to know. So this is where we cross the y, this is where we cross the x. So our x-intercept is going to be -1, and our y-intercept is going to be +2. So again, a y-intercept is here, the x-intercept is going to be right there. And so if we were to write this, and let me go ahead and write this as points, because again, very important. Our x-intercept would be -1 and 0, while our y-intercept would be 0 and 2. Now, the important thing to note here is that the y, when we're talking about the x-intercept, the y will always be 0. And when we're talking about the y-intercept, the x is going to always be 0. Now let's look at something like a quadratic graph. We have our y-intercept over here, but this one actually crosses the x twice. So we're going to have two x-intercepts, -2 and 0, and +2 and 0, while the y-intercept is going to be at 0 and -4. Now looking at something like this, if you notice, we don't actually have something that's very clear. It actually goes through the origin. So in this situation, our line actually crosses the x-intercept at 0 and 0, but it also crosses the y-intercept at the same place. So 0 and 0 would be both the x and the y-intercept. Now with this one, it's not very clear, but this is the line right here. So we do have a y-intercept right there at 0 and +3. But if you notice, the line is horizontal. We never actually hit this x-axis. So we would say that we have none in terms of the x-intercept. So as a summary, the x-intercept, the y-coordinate is always going to be 0. And then for the y-intercept, the x-coordinate is also always going to be 0.